Hello everyone, and today we are going to transform everything you see here into the best baked beans you've ever eaten. Come along and cook with me. Hi, as I stated today in the intro, we're going to be making barbecue baked beans. Barbecue is something that's not only close to me, but is what taught me to have an appreciation for the simplest things when it comes to cooking. My grandma taught me how to make every Italian dish in the world, but when I went to college, in North Carolina, I learned how to make true barbecue, and I'd love to share those recipes with you going forward and the methods that I use. So today is barbecue baked beans, and we're gonna do them inside instead of outside on a smoker, because not a lot of people have those. And we're just gonna do this with stuff we have in our pantry, like canned beans and some other things we have laying around. Tracy wants to go outside. Okay, so stick around and we're gonna make the best barbecue baked beans you've ever had. Okay, I've sped up the footage here quite considerably, because this is just opening some cans of beans, and I think everybody knows how to do that. So we're gonna get these together. This is some navy beans, some red kidney beans, and some cannellini beans. Any large bean will work with this recipe, except for black beans and lima beans, so just don't use those. We're gonna go ahead and throw these into now our largest metal bowl. And now you can see that we're not draining them, and because we need as much liquid as we can possibly get, because these are going to be in the oven for around 4 hours, so we need as much moisture as possible. Alright, so next up we're going to put our seasonings in. We're going to start with what I call Joe's Magic Dust. This is a mixture of salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, parsley, some paprika, some sugar, and a little bit of cinnamon. So basically it's every flavor you can get, and there's some nutmeg in there too. 3 big heavy pinches, so about 3 tablespoons of that. And that covers our bases as far as base seasonings go. Next up, we're going to put in some dried yellow mustard. It's just mustard powder. That's 1.5 tablespoons of that. Afterwards, we're going to put in some of my barbecue rub. This is just regular rub. Works well on pork, chicken, and I'll give you the recipe for that at some point. This is some smoked paprika, because since we're inside, we need some more smoke in this, because we're not going to get it from the wood. Next, a little bit of spice, some cayenne pepper, just a dash. And after that, we're going to put in some of bacon solids. These are just dried, it's just dried bacon, really. And this is a mesquite rub that I make. This is just with some dehydrated mesquite and some sugar and a couple of other things. So what we need to do now is mix this together. And mixing it, you kind of want to let this sit for a bit, maybe 5-10 minutes. Just kind of let it sit and mellow out before we add our bourbon. This is a 200 milliliter container of bourbon, so that's about 6 ounces, 6.5 ounces. So we're going to go ahead and put this in now. Now, if you don't want to use bourbon, you're uncomfortable with alcohol, a good combination substitute would be apple juice with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and then some liquid smoke. Would give it a similar flavor. Anyway, it won't taste the same, but you can use that as a substitute if you need be. Alright, so we got that mixed in. Now some Worcestershire sauce. That is 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire. That's just going to give it some nice rounded salty and umami notes. And then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of tomato paste, and we're going to mix that in. If anybody ever tells you to put ketchup in your beans, don't do that. Ketchup is too sweet. It has too much vinegar in it. It's not a good base. So tomato paste is perfectly fine. And we're tasting it now to see what it needs. And again, every time you taste, new spoon. This is a new spoon each time. So I think we need some brown sugar. And we're going to put in now, this is light brown sugar. It's about 1/2 cup. I'm going to put in here, 1/2 cup packed, and roughly about 4 ounces of light brown sugar. And we're going to go ahead and mix that in until it dissolves. And then the next thing we're going to put in here is some molasses. This is blackstrap molasses. If you can't find this, because sometimes you can't, it's full flavor molasses is perfectly fine. Most everybody has some type of molasses in their cabinet. This stuff keeps forever, like honey. It never spoils. So if you have blackstrap, use it. Full flavor, you're going to use about 50% more, and if it's light molasses, you're going to lose double the amount you would a blackstrap. So in this case, we're going to use the full flavor because I think that's more readily available, and this is about 2 tablespoons of full flavor molasses. So we'll put that in there, and then we're going to go ahead and mix this up. And we're going to mix that, and next we're going to move on to our aromatic base, to the board. Okay, so we're going to start here with some onions and garlic. This is a big onion, the biggest one I had. This is just either a sweet onion, you can use a Vidalia or a Mayan sweet. This is a Spanish onion. Now we've gone over dicing onions, but we've never gone over peeling them. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to cut off the stem end. That's that end right there that I'm cutting, okay? And what I'm going to do from there is now I have a good grip to go ahead and peel. We don't want to get rid of this root because that's going to help us later on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and peel this down. Get your fingernails underneath there, and it just comes right off. I mean, the skin is pretty easy to get off of these, and it gets that kind of weird layer off that's right under the skin that's kind of like, you know, sometimes a little slimy. So this takes that all off, and then we have a perfectly peeled onion after I get my hands working here. All right, so the reason why we left that root end on is not only does it make it easier for us to cut because it holds it together, but by holding it together, there's less of a chance of those airborne particles that make you cry getting towards you. So instead of dicing, we're going to go ahead and slice these in half moon shapes. No crosswise cuts, no nothing, just straight down, just like that. Okay, straight down with the knife, and you see I'm going forward there instead of backwards. That's because the knife is doing the work. I'm just sliding it in. And we just want some nice, thin slices. You could call this a julienne. It really isn't, though. This is more Frenching an onion. So we're just going to go ahead and slice these thin because that's what we need. We need long strands that break down easily and have a lot of surface area to give you the flavor that you need for your base of your braisier with the beans. So we'll finish that onion up, and next up, we're going to do garlic. All right, so I've got a whole head of garlic over here. You can see that on the edge of the board. So what I'm going to do here is take off 4 big cloves, and I'm kind of digging in there and breaking them off. You may have seen people, they do on cooking shows a lot, they'll show you a trick to get the garlic out, and where they'll put it in a metal bowl, shake it up, shake it up, shake it up, and it works beautifully, and all your garlic comes out perfectly clean. What they don't show you is the 42 takes they did where it didn't work. So I'm going to do this live for you and show you how to do this. So this is the easiest way to peel garlic. You take your knife, you put it on top of it, and then you just smack it right when it's in its skin, right there in the middle of the knife. You see that? Right in the middle. And you go whack, boom, and there you go. You can just pop it right out of the skin. That's really, really easy, and it works 100% of the time. It's really, really easy to do. And that way, once we have that, because it's partially crushed already, it's easier to then chop up and put into our plans later. So this is how we want to hit garlic. We want to smash it and pop it right out of that skin. This isn't fancy, but it's tried and true, so this is what I swear by, and I'm giving it to you because that's the way to do it. We're just going to get a rough chop on this garlic because we don't want it to break down. I know I haven't done any sort of mincing or garlic pressing, anything like that yet. We'll get to recipes where that's required, but we want a rough chop here because this is going to be in the oven for such a long time that these garlic pieces are going to roast and they're going to break down, so we need more heft to them so they don't completely burn when we saute our aromatics first. Next up, we got some bacon. This is thick cut applewood smoked bacon, just basic, store-bought stuff, whatever you can find really and get your hands on. I got 6 pieces here, and they are relatively thick. We're just going to cut these into what's called lardons in France. But just all that really means is 1-inch pieces of, bacon. essentially. We're gonna let the knife do the work there, real sharp knife. And you know, if you cut bacon, sometimes it gets a little slippery. The easiest way to get around that is to just move your knife forward first, and then it slides right through it as you pull it back. So we have our rashers, they're cut up. We're gonna put it into a big skillet here. This is my 12-inch non-stick. All that bacon goes in there, and we're gonna add something just to get it started. And it's a little bit of olive oil, not very much, like roughly a teaspoon, because there's a lot. All right, let's go to the stove. All right, so we're gonna start this bacon and our olive oil here in a cold pan. Similar to how we did eggs, we want this to all come up to temp at the same time. So we put it on a cold pan, and we're gonna turn our burner on as high as it will go. And you see, I've got a 1/4 cup of water here. What this is gonna help us do is render the fat out of the bacon, because we want all of that bacon fat as much as possible, but we also don't want our bacon to be soggy. We want it to be crispy. So the best way to do that, take a 1/4 cup of water, throw it in there with your bacon, crank it on high heat, and by the time that water starts to boil and that fat starts to render, we're gonna have nice crispy bacon in about half the time you normally would, because it's gonna render out twice as much fat as usual. See that there? And once we get that rendered out, we're gonna throw in our aromatics that we chopped, and we're gonna go ahead and mix these up. Now we're gonna cook everything here in the bacon fat. We don't have to add any more fat to this. That's all we need. And notice the glistening there, like we talked about in marinara sauce. You can see the fat is coating all of our aromatics. So we're gonna saute these for a few minutes until they get a little color on them. You don't want too much, just a little bit of color. Shake it up and shake off your spoon and just kind of let that saute. That's gonna be, 2-3 minutes, something like that. And we're gonna add a little bit of black pepper. It doesn't need any more salt. Bacon's pretty salty, but the pepper really helps kind of bring out a little more flavor. Plus, we don't want to draw any more water out of these onions. We need to keep them intact for a long time. So anything to prevent them from breaking down prematurely. All right, so I've got some color on my aromatics now, and we're basically done with this. We're ready to move on to the next phase, which is getting everything ready for the oven. So here we go. Okay, I've lined a roasting pan here with some aluminum foil so it's easier to clean up later. We're gonna put our aromatics in. That's all of it. Make sure we get all of that bacon fat out of there and all of the aromatics. Now you notice when I said they were just barely had some color on them, that's true. Next, we put our bean mixture, which has been sitting there for 10 minutes or so to kind of meld together. So we're gonna mix all this together. Try to get everything out of that bowl. Every last drop, because that is gold, my friends. So once we get that all out of the bowl here, we're gonna go ahead and mix this together. And then what we wanna do is cover this with foil and stick it into the middle of a 300-degree oven for an hour and a half. All right, so we're gonna cover this, throw this in our oven at 300 degrees, and I will see you in 90 minutes. You can go take a nap if you want. Okay, this is what it looks like after 90 minutes at 300 degrees. We're going to go ahead now and add some beef stock. This is a collagen bold, unsalted. I didn't have any homemade out of the freezer. This is perfectly fine to use if you have this on hand. The box stuff is perfectly fine here. You can use some vegetable stock too. Just don't use chicken stock or turkey stock. It's going to throw off the flavors. Okay, and now what we're going to do is crank our oven to 450, put this in uncovered, and leave it in there for 20 to 25 minutes until we get some caramelization. And this is what it looks like 20 minutes later. I pulled this at 21 minutes. We've got some nice caramelization happening there. You see the liquid's reduced quite a bit. And we've got some brown bits around the outside. That's all good stuff. So we want to stir that together. And then what we're going to do is put this back in that same 450-degree oven for another 35 minutes until we get it where we want it. Here we are. After 35 minutes at another 450 degrees, we are done. Look at the nice black ring around there. You get some nice caramelization from the sugar. You're done. Your onions are broken down but still visible. Your bacon is crispy and soft at the same time. This is ready. I'm Chef Joe, and thank you for watching this part of our series, Introduction to Barbecue, the Great American Art Form. I hope you'll stick around for the remaining sections when we talk about everything from sauce to pork, chicken, beef, everything all under the sun that I'm well versed in, so I can give you the best techniques possible to make your own with whatever you've got laying around. If you haven't had a chance yet, check out our website at www.realscratchcooking.com, as well as our Patreon at patreon.com/FRSCwithlove. Links for all of our social media and all of those other things are in the description. You have yourself a wonderful day.